Does someone have a spare agenda for the joint meeting? I would like to call to order the joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Housing Authority. May we have the roll call for the council, please?
Council members Draymond.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Najarian.
Here.
May we have the roll call for the Housing Authority?
Authority members Draymond.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Mincy.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Brazian.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chair Quintero.
Here.
Thank you. May we have your report?
Agenda for the May 4th, 2010 joint meeting, public meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Housing Authority was posted on Thursday, April 29, 2010 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Will you read the first item?
The item before you today is Director of Community Services and Parks regarding Federal Housing and Urban Development HUD Section 108 loan guarantee application for a homeless access center and emergency shelter acquisition and rehabilitation project. One is council resolution authorizing city manager to submit the Section 108 application in the amount of $2 million with a 10-year repayment term to HUD and to execute all necessary documents in connection therewith.
Thank you. And who are we going to? Mr. Starbird?
We'll go to George Chapshin, Director of Community Services and Parks.
Thank you, Mr. Starbird. Mayor Najarian, members of the City Council and Housing Authority. In November 2009, the City Council and Housing Authority received the report and approved a proposed fiscal year 2010-2011 CDBG funding allocation plan by funding category. And as part of that discussion, the Council and Authority also received a report regarding a request from Path Achieve Glendale for the city to consider assisting Path with $2 million in CDBG funds for acquisition and rehabilitation project to develop a new access center and emergency shelter for homeless individuals and families in Glendale. The facility would allow for the expansion of services currently provided by Path Achieve. Staff further proposed that the most viable option for funding a project of this magnitude with CDBG funds without impacting other funding needs in the community was the use of HUD Section 8, a HUD Section 8 loan. As part of the proposal, Path Achieve Glendale committed to the matching of the $4 million project. The Council and Housing Authority expressed support for the project and directed staff to continue work with Path Achieve Glendale and pursue a Section 108 loan from HUD. As a side note, the last time the city did a Section 108 loan was the City of Glendale and GUST joint project on the Pacific Edison School and Park, and that was a $1.8 million loan. Since November, Path Achieve Glendale has identified a property, opened escrow, held a neighborhood meeting, and submitted plans for approval to the Planning Commission. Path Achieve Glendale has also partnered with SH Hope and Compassion Center, a nonprofit organization which owns the Access Center and emergency shelter, and will lease it to Path Achieve Glendale, which will allow Path Achieve Glendale to continue to receive federal supportive housing program SHP funds to pay for operational costs. Path Achieve Glendale is now ready to utilize Section 108 loan funds to complete the acquisition and rehabilitation. What I'd like to do is call Jess Duran up so he can give you further details on the HUD loan, in terms of the HUD loan. Jess?
Thank you, George. Mayor Najarian, members of the City Council, Chairman Quintero, members of the Housing Authority. As you are all aware, PATH currently operates the Emergency Shelter and Access Center located at 437 Fernando Court, where it has operated successfully for over 10 years. PATH's lease at Fernando Court expires in June 2010, so the PATH Board has made it a mission of theirs to acquire and develop a new facility rather than continue leasing at Fernando Court. The current project concept is a modification to the proposal that we discussed with you back in November. The original proposal involved acquiring and developing a facility that would be a combined access center, emergency shelter, and housing all on one property. The current project concept now involves a larger acquisition and expansion of services project with two components. The first component being the acquisition and rehabilitation of an access center and emergency shelter, for which the Section 108 loan funds would be used. But the second component would involve the acquisition and rehabilitation of separate apartment buildings throughout the community to total approximately 20 units to provide permanent housing units for graduates of the emergency shelter program, for which Path Achieve Glendale and the SH Hope $2 million contribution would be used for. So it's now two components. There's no doubt that there's a critical need in this community, as there is in communities throughout this country, for permanent supportive housing units in which to place families and individuals working their way through the homeless continuum of care. So it's a big need. The new concept is more feasible, it's more cost-effective, and it's consistent with HUD's highest priority of permanent supportive housing. Staff feels confident that if these housing units are developed, the HUD will provide new program and operational funding under the supportive housing program, which we apply for every year. Path to Chief Glendale estimates that the housing component will cost $2 million, hence proposes that they and the SH Hope Corporation contribute that $2 million to the larger project. The Access Center and Emergency Shelter project now consists of an 8,000 square foot lot containing an existing 8,100 square foot two-story industrial commercial building located on the corner of Gardena and Tyburn. The property is across the road, across from the railroad right-of-way and the boundary with the city of Los Angeles. The Chief Glendale plans to add 2,717 square feet to the second floor of the building for a total building area of 10,867 square feet, which is 3,367 square feet larger than their existing facility at Fernando Court, which is only 7,500 square feet. The expanded space will allow for separating sleeping quarters between the men and the women and children, which we all feel is very important. The project requires a use variance, which was approved by the Planning Commission on April 21st. In terms of the loan, if approved by HUD, the city will use its annual CDBG entitlement in order to make loan payments, including principal and interest, which are currently estimated to be $248,000 a year. So loan payments would be budgeted every year as a capital improvement project when the city pre-designates city CIP projects during the annual planning. The loan term would be for 10 years. The current estimated interest rate is 4.14%. The total finance charges with fees would be $498,000. Therefore, the total loan amount would be $2,498,000. And there would be no repayment of the loan required by Path to Chief Glendale or the SH Hope Nonprofit Corporation. Based on the preliminary discussion Mr. Creel and I have had with HUD, we feel there's a good possibility that HUD will approve the loan and that it will be approved within 3 to 4 months. And the loan with HUD will be secured by the City of Glendale. The city will execute a memorandum of understanding with Path to Chief Glendale and the SH Hope Nonprofit Corporation while the Section 8 loan application is in process. And then once the loan is approved, the city will execute a subrecipient or development agreement laying out all of the terms of the city's security on the project, including a promissory note and a deed of trust. Finally, I would like to mention that staff is exploring with HUD the feasibility and eligibility of a bridge loan from the city to Path to Chief Glendale and the SH Hope Corporation to facilitate closing escrow and securing the matching funds that Path to Chief Glendale needs from the new nonprofit corporation. And if it is determined to be feasible, we would like to come back and recommend approval of a resolution of appropriation to provide that bridge loan in order to consummate this project. This time, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. We do have board members of Path to Chief Glendale, Mr. Nick Lamb and Rodney Kahn, who have been working diligently on this project, along with the Executive Director of Path to Chief Glendale, Natalie Profont-Camuro.
Any questions? Mr. Durang, could you please go over the financing again for me, including the one thing that I was wondering about is the CDBG funds that it's requested that we will pre-designate about $250,000 a year from the capital program.
Correct.
For 10 years to pay back. This is the $2 million loan?
Correct. Correct.
So we're paying them $2.5 million for a $2 million loan.
Including finance charges, it's almost 2.5.
Are those rates acceptable? I don't know what that interest rate works out to be.
It's 4.14.
Right. Which
Very acceptable rate.
which is a lot better than our current 1.8 loan that we're still paying on.
Which, if I can, Mr. Chair, is something we should probably add, the status of the Pacific Edison Section 108 loan that'll be going off. So the impact really leaves us about in the same place we were in 2 years. We have 2 more years' payments?
Correct. There'll be about 1 year of overlap. Then after that, it'll be about the same amount that we were already setting aside for the Edison Pacific payments.
So we got a 108 loan for Edison Pacific, and that'll be paid off a year after this loan. So we'll have 1 year of overlap, and then the payments will be roughly about the same.
And so we've been pre-designating
Yes,
that
you've been
Pacific
pre-designating
Edison.
that Section 108 for the past 9 years now.
Okay. Okay, so it wouldn't hurt any of the existing, it's not a new, it's taking the place of an additional placekeeper, if you will, designation
That's
category.
correct. That's correct, Mr. Mayor. And that's the beauty of being able to take advantage of the loan from HUD, is that it doesn't impact our ability to meet our other capital improvement priorities in the community.
Okay. Okay, any other questions of staff? We do have some cards. Let's hear from the public.
Bless you.
Nick Lamb?
Mr. Mayor, member of the City Council, Chairman Quintero, and member of the Housing Committee. My name is Nick Lamb. I'm the board chair for Papa Chief Glendale. First of all, I just want to thank the City of Glendale for being so sensitive to the problem of homelessness in Glendale and willing to hand us a helping hand. We are so blessed to have a devoted board. About 13, 14 of us spend a lot of our time, not for our own glory, not for our own profit, but for the benefit of the City of Glendale. So Papa Chief Glendale can really be only described as a good public-private partnership that the city with public money together with the private money together we join hands to do something good for the homeless and underprivileged folks in the City of Glendale. Mr. Duran and already kind of give you a pretty good overall description of the project. And the only request I want to make is that if possible, I would request the city to do the bridge loan to close the escrow. The reason for that is, even though we have about another 3 or 4 months to close escrow, however, because currently it is a warehouse, so there's a lot of goods and stuff inside the warehouse, make it impossible for us to go in and do a survey, x-ray the wall, x-ray the foundation, and do any planning. So if nothing happens until closing, we have to wait 4 months before the seller move out and remove all the goods in the warehouse, and that will kind of delay us like 4 months. We estimate another 6 months to get a building permit. So if we can get a bridge loan sooner, we can close the escrow sooner, and then we can start the work sooner. And the other reason I'm asking for that is that we have preliminary commitment from S.H. Ho Foundation. It's the family foundation for Mr. David Ho, the owner of Pacific BMW, for $2 million to match the city fund. And this has been going on you approved the allocation last year, and then I asked for the entitlement and was approved almost a year ago. And then keep delaying another 4 months, and then another 3 more months, make me nervous. I don't want to lose the entitlement. USC is asking them big time for a lot of money to improve the campus. I want to make sure that I got my share of $2 million to put it in the City of Glendale. And the only way for me to get it is when I get the money and I can match it and I can put the money into the account. So the sooner we can do that, the better for the homeless people in Glendale, and we just want to reduce the risk that we may lose it. So with that, I just want to thank you again for all your help. We are fortunate to have a city council like you guys, and I want to thank you on behalf of all the homeless people in the City of Glendale. And I hope you can take my recommendation and, if possible, do a bridge loan so we can close the deal sooner. And that's all I have. If you have any question, I'd be happy to answer. If not, Mr. Khan may want to say a few things.
Mr. Khan is next.
I just want to know, is the choice between USC and Glendale?
We choose Glendale. Once again, good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. My name is Rodney Kahn, and along with Nick Lamb, I'm on the Board of Directors of Path Achieve Glendale. And I know this is a funding hearing, so I'll spare you my standard spiel that I give for land use and planning issues. But there's really a couple things that I do want to point out about the new facility. One, it's a great location, it's a great environment, better than where we're at now, because we have less of an industrial area that we're in now, and we're also closer to Cerritos Park and Cerritos Elementary School, which, as you know, we have a number of our clients have children, so that helps us a lot. The second thing is, and I think Jess pointed it out very nicely in his presentation, was it actually gives us an opportunity for the additional square footage to separate the men from the women and from the children as well, which we don't have now. So that's important. Those are two ideas and thoughts. The last thing is that, as Nick pointed out, we have a lot of momentum right now. Our lease is up in June, so it's next month. And we're actually we're negotiating or renegotiating, trying to extend it out for as far as we can on a shorter term lease. And that's been a little bit difficult with the current property owner. So anything you guys can do to help expedite us would really help. Thank you very much. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Let's take the next speaker, Mike Moholt. Didn't we talk about this last week?
No, you had to talk to Barry first.
Okay. Mr. Mohill chooses to take his cell call, and that's his choice, but it's our choice to go on with the meeting. So let me go to the chair, Mr. Quintero.
Well, a lot of thank yous going around. I want to thank Path Achieve and Nick Lamb specifically for all that he's done throughout the years, both the organization and Mr. Lamb and Mr. Ho, who have literally contributed hundreds of thousands of dollars to these endeavors. And as Mr. Lamb said, without any glory for himself, he's just doing it because he believes in what Path Achieve has done in the community, and he believes in trying to help homeless people have a reasonable place to sleep at night, and specifically homeless families. So I'm very supportive of the loan and very supportive of what they're doing. I think I've driven by the proposed location at least 5 or 6 times, and during the day and the late afternoon, and I think it's going to be a great location to have this type of project. As was mentioned, it's right around the corner from the park and the elementary school, within walking distance of our transportation center for future employment needs. Lots of buses running up and down San Fernando Road, so I think it's a good idea. And then the idea of the transitional housing, to take the step after this type of center, I think that's the way to go, so that we do have a continuum of care. So I think this is a great idea, and I'll move the resolution whenever it's appropriate.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Just ditto what Mr. Quintero said. Thank you, Nick, for your stick-to-itiveness.
I just have a question just to remind us where we are in the overall process. This item is specifically to approve the loan, approve the application for the 108 funding. The neighbors have all had their outreach concerns addressed, Mr. Duran, and it's been through the Planning Commission. Do we get to weigh in on artistic design or anything like that at this point?
I think that's a question better directed to the design team. But
Because I haven't. Is there a design that's out there?
It's existing building.
it's mainly tenant improvements, I believe, but there will be some exterior improvements and some
So the second floor.
additional landscaping.
Mr. Chair, we should note that there was a use hearing before the Planning Commission, which I think is still probably subject to appeal. Correct? Yeah. The appeal period hasn't run yet, so if it were appealed, the matter could be coming to the City Council.
That is correct. If I can add just a quick comment. Two things, Mr. Mayor, as it relates to the design of the building. We're trying to operate within the existing building envelope, but there will be some upgrades to the facade of the building. So you will see some color changes. You'll also see some landscaping installed to kind of beautify that site. So you are going to see some minor modifications to the exterior of the building. Most of the work is taking place on the inside, though. And as Mr. Starber pointed out, we did have a community meeting, and we had 4 people attend, 3 of which were from the same household. I have personally had a number of meetings with property owners from that area, and they had some concerns. They wanted to know if this project was going to impact their property values. So we did some research, and we presented that information to them. At the Planning Commission hearing for the use variance, we had no one show up in opposition, and we had 1 letter of opposition that was submitted. Everyone else that showed up was in support. So we've done quite a bit of community outreach for this project. I hope that answers your question.
It does. And the total expansion, tell us how many are served now by Path Achieve and what the new facility will provide, women and children, and what the approximate mix is.
Mr. Mayor, as it relates to the operations right now, there's 2 components to it. One is the access center, and the other is the emergency shelter. The emergency shelter has 40 beds. About half of that is, I forget the breakdown, but let's say about half of that is for women and children, and the other half is for men. And so that's why the separation at the new facility is so important. That will remain the same at the new facility. We're not adding beds. It's the same 40 beds. In terms of the access center itself, right now we're in a very confined, restricted area as it relates to square footage. So this additional square footage, we won't increase the number of employees. We will actually increase the program area and space. So it'll be more functional, and we'll be able to have a little bit more privacy as it relates to when we're having our case managers deal with clients and so on and so forth. So the hours of operation will be about the same. The number of beds will be about the same, and the number of employees will be about the same as we currently are. We'll just have more room.
And one other thought came to my mind as Mr. Quintero was explaining the different facilities that are nearby, adjacent to that. Talked about the school, talked about the transportation center, the park. How close is the new Minutemen Youth Center? It's just across the street, isn't it?
It's if you go further, we're on Tyburn and Gardena. That's on San Fernando Road. So if you go about a block and a half to the north, and then about a block to the east, I think that's
about a block or so away.
About a block or so away.
Why don't we, since they're so much closer now to Home Minutemen, would you contact them and let them know that the authority, if there's no objection, and the council suggests that they also make, if they don't already, make athletic programs available to those kids.
Certainly.
At Path Achieve, and whether they're there long enough to get involved in a basketball league after school or whatever, but certainly I think since they're so much closer than previous, and since we do help out Home Minutemen with some of our CDBG funding, and since they're open to the entire community, let's connect those two and maybe even give those kids a better life while they're looking for a permanent home.
We'll certainly do that, and I think that's a great idea.
Any other comments? I think we're ready for, who wanted to make the motion?
Mr. Chair, if I can.
Mr. Starbucks. Mr. Moho, when I called your name, you ran out of the room. You have to choose.
Mr. Chair, part of the
Can't do both.
staff's presentation and Mr. Lamb's request is that we look into providing a bridge loan from the time that the property is actually acquired and closed, the time that the SB 108 loan would be provided. The current motion doesn't provide either any authorization or direction with respect to that. I've asked our city attorney if we can modify the motion to at least have direction to get the sense of the authority and to allow staff to then begin to prepare documentation for the bridge loan on the condition that it's authorized by HUD and won't impair our ability to get the Section 108 loan.
Okay,
Second his motion.
I will move the resolution with the provisions as outlined by Mr. Starbird.
That'll be an additional Section 3 to the resolution.
Okay, good.
That's my second.
So let me just address that. A worst case, if the loan doesn't come through, we'll just pay ourselves back over the 10 years with the CDBG earmarks?
We won't disperse a bridge loan or proceed with that unless HUD says it will not impair approval of the Section 108. So the Section 108 loan will repay essentially the bridge loan. So the bridge loan will come out of reserves for the time period between the entering and closing escrow and when the Section 108 loan is approved. Section 108 loan proceeds will then go back to pay back the bridge loan to the Housing Authority, and then you'll make payments on the Section 108 loan out of future CDBG.
But is there a risk that the 108 loan is not approved
Well,
after we make a bridge loan? In other words, we're anticipating the 108 money to come in. Until it does, we're fronting the money.
We will get a greater level of confidence from the HUD staff on the 108 loan and the fact that the 108 loan won't impair its approval before we disperse those funds.
Well, as I said, worst comes to worst, we would pay ourselves back.
Well, worst case,
CDBG.
you've got the property as security. I mean, the documentation is yet to be done, but we anticipate the property as security. And then, of course, you'd have a number of options depending on what happens with the 108. One of those could be, you continue to finance it and pay yourselves back out of the future CDBG over some period of time, or fund it entirely out of next year or the years following CDBG. So you've got a number of fallback positions you can take.
Okay.
Pardon me for interjecting, Mr. Mayor. As I understand it, at this point in time, all we're going to be doing is authorizing staff to explore this bridge loan, to determine whether or not there's any impairment, and if it's determined that there's no impairment to the 108 loan and that we'll get it, then we can draft the necessary documents and execute the necessary documents.
Yeah, I'd like to include in the motion that we be authorized to prepare the documentation, given the condition that the HUD staff is okay, even though it may require future authority action to actually consummate it.
Okay, with that
I will
language.
consider that part of the motion.
I'll also consider.
Okay, so let's see. This is a council resolution. So let's take the roll for council.
Councilmember Strayman?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes.
Move to adjourn for the city council.
Second.
Council's adjourned.
Move to adjourn for the housing authority. Second.
We are adjourned for the House.